I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Coulter Ames turned his Ford F-150 into the driveway of his modest two-story home on East Sprague Avenue. The October air carried the scent of burning leaves and approaching winter. He'd spent 12 hours at Ames Performance, his custom auto shop, rebuilding a transmission for a local contractor. His hands still smelled of motor oil and metal shavings. The house looked normal from the outside. Same white siding, same black shutters, same manicured lawn that Jolene insisted on maintaining. But something felt wrong the moment he stepped out of his truck. Too quiet. Talia should be running to the window by now, pressing her tiny palms against the glass and calling Daddy in that voice that made every brutal day worth surviving. Coulter pushed through the front door and stopped. His daughter lay on the living room carpet, her small body unnaturally still. Her breathing came in shallow, labored gasps. Her lips had a bluish tint that made his Marine training kick in immediately. Jolene. His voice cut through the house like a blade. His wife sat on the couch, legs crossed, watching some mindless television show. She turned toward him with the kind of calm that made his skin crawl. No panic, no concern, just empty eyes and a slight smile. She just fell, Jolene said, not moving from her position. She's okay. Leave her be. Coulter stared at his wife for exactly 2 seconds. In those seconds, he cataloged everything wrong with this picture. Talia didn't just fall. 2-year-olds bounced back from falls. They cried. They demanded comfort. They didn't lie motionless with their breathing that shallow. Leave her be. The words came out flat and dangerous. She needs to learn. Coulter was already moving. He scooped Talia into his arms, feeling how limp she was, how her head lolled against his shoulder. Her skin felt clammy and cold. We're going to the hospital. Coulter, you're overreacting. She's fine. He turned to face Jolene. She hadn't moved, still sitting there like nothing was happening to their daughter. Get in the truck. I don't think. Get in the truck, or I leave without you. Something in his voice must have penetrated whatever fog she was operating in. Jolene stood slowly, grabbed her purse, and followed him outside. The drive to Deaconess Medical Center took 8 minutes. Coulter ran 3 red lights and took corners fast enough to make his tires squeal. Talia stayed limp in the passenger seat, secured by the seatbelt he'd wrapped around both of them. Jolene sat in the back seat, silent. What happened exactly? Coulter asked without looking in the rearview mirror. I told you. She fell. Fell from where? The couch. And then what? And then nothing. She just stayed down. Coulter's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The couch was maybe 2 feet high. Kids fell from couches all the time. They didn't end up like this. He pulled into the emergency room parking lot and killed the engine. Stay here. What? I said stay here. Coulter carried Talia through the automatic doors of the ER. The triage nurse took one look at his daughter and immediately called for a doctor. What happened? The nurse had kind eyes and moved with practiced efficiency. My wife said she fell from the couch, but she's been like this for at least an hour. How long has she been unresponsive? I don't know. I just got home from work. The nurse made notes on her clipboard. And where is your wife? In the parking lot. The nurse gave him a look he couldn't quite read. We'll need to speak with both parents. She's coming. But when Coulter looked back through the glass doors, he saw Jolene still sitting in the truck, staring straight ahead like she was in some kind of trance. Doctor Wesley Crane appeared within minutes. Coulter recognized competence when he saw it the way the man moved with purpose, how his eyes immediately focused on Talia instead of the paperwork. I'm Dr. Crane. Tell me what happened. Coulter repeated the story. Fall from the couch. Unresponsive for unknown duration. Dr. Crane nodded and began his examination, checking Talia's pupils, listening to her breathing, testing her reflexes. We're going to run some tests. Blood work, maybe a CT scan, depending on what we find. Whatever you need to do. I'll need to speak with your wife as well. Coulter went back to the parking lot. Jolene was exactly where he'd left her. The doctor wants to talk to you. She looked at him like he'd interrupted something important. About what? About what happened to our daughter. Jolene sighed and got out of the truck. She walked into the hospital like she was heading to a routine appointment. Doctor Crane was waiting at the nurse's station when they arrived. He looked up from his chart, saw Jolene, and his entire demeanor changed. His face went pale. His hand froze on the pen he was holding. "You brought her," Dr. Crane whispered to the nurse beside him. "Why? Why is she here?" The nurse looked confused. Dr. Crane stared at Jolene like she was a ghost. Jolene stared back with that same empty expression she'd had on the couch. Coulter stepped forward. "Is there a problem?" Dr. Crane blinked and seemed to remember where he was. No problem. Let's focus on your daughter." But Coulter caught the way the doctor's hands shook slightly as he made notes. Caught the way he kept glancing at Jolene when he thought no one was looking. "Mrs. Ames," Dr. Crane said, his voice carefully controlled. "Can you walk me through exactly what happened?" "Talia was playing on the couch. She fell. She seemed fine, so I let her rest." "For how long?" "I don't know. An hour maybe." "And she didn't cry? Didn't call for you?" "No." Dr. Crane made more notes. His hand was definitely shaking now. "We're going to run some tests," he said finally. "Blood work, imaging. It might take a few hours." "I'll wait," Coulter said. "Mrs. Ames, I'll need you to fill out some paperwork. Medical history, current medications, that sort of thing." Jolene nodded and followed a nurse to the registration desk. As soon as she was out of earshot, Dr. Crane moved closer to Coulter. "Keep your daughter close," he said quietly. "What does that mean?" Dr. Crane looked toward the registration desk, where Jolene was mechanically filling out forms. "Just keep her close." 3 hours later, Dr. Crane found Coulter in the family waiting area. Talia was awake now, sitting in her father's lap and drinking apple juice from a sippy cup. She seemed more like herself, but Coulter wasn't taking any chances. "Can we talk privately?" Dr. Crane asked. They stepped into a small consultation room. Dr. Crane closed the door and sat across from Coulter. "The good news is that Talia is going to be fine. Whatever was in her system is working its way out. Whatever was in her system, that's what I need to discuss with you." The blood work showed traces of clonidine. Coulter had never heard the word before. "What is that?" "It's a medication typically used to treat ADHD in children, sometimes blood pressure in adults. The concerning thing is the amount we found." "Concerning how?" "It's not a therapeutic dose. It's enough to cause the symptoms you described. Lethargy, respiratory depression, altered consciousness." Coulter felt something cold settle in his stomach. "You're saying someone gave this to her?" "I'm saying it doesn't happen accidentally. Clonidine isn't something you find lying around the house." "Do you or your wife have a prescription for clonidine?" "No." "Has Talia ever been prescribed anything like this?" "No. She's 2 years old. She's never needed medication for anything." Dr. Crane nodded grimly. "Mr. Ames, I have to ask, has your daughter ever had any unexplained illnesses? Episodes where she seemed unwell for no clear reason?" Coulter thought about it. There had been a few times over the past months when Jolene mentioned Talia having off days. Days when she was tired, when she didn't want to play, when she just wanted to sleep. "Maybe. My wife mentioned she had some tired days recently. And you weren't home for these episodes?" "I work long hours. My wife handles most of the day-to-day care." Dr. Crane was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully neutral. "Mr. Ames, I'm required by law to report certain things to Child Protective Services. A 2-year-old with this level of clonidine in her system is one of those things. You think someone gave this to her on purpose? I think you need to be very careful. And I think you need to keep detailed records of anything unusual that happens with your daughter." Coulter left the hospital with more questions than answers. Jolene rode home in silence, staring out the passenger window. Talia slept in her car's seat, finally looking peaceful, but Coulter's mind was racing. Clonidine, enough to sedate a 2-year-old. Someone had given it to her. Someone in his house. Coulter waited 3 days before he started looking that he told himself he was being paranoid. That there had to be another explanation. Maybe Talia had gotten into something at the neighbor's house. Maybe there was contamination somewhere. Maybe the blood test was wrong. But Dr. Crane's words kept echoing in his head. Keep your daughter close. That on Thursday morning, after Jolene left to run errands and Talia was napping, Coulter started in the bedroom. He went through Jolene's dresser drawers methodically, looking for anything that didn't belong. Prescription bottles, pills, Anything, he found nothing that I in her nightstand drawer. He found the usual collection of hand lotion, reading glasses, and old magazines. But underneath the magazines was a small plastic bag with white pills inside. No label. No prescription bottle. Coulter took a picture with his phone and put everything back exactly as he'd found it. Next, he checked her car. Jolene drove a silver Honda Accord that she kept obsessively clean. Coulter knew every inch of that car from the times he'd worked on it. But when he opened the glove compartment, there was something new that a second cell phone, .it, was a cheap flip phone, the kind you could buy at any convenience store. Coulter turned it on and scrolled through the recent calls. Most of them were to and from a number with a 509 area code. Local. He checked the text messages. Tomorrow at 2. Same place. Sent yesterday. Can't wait to start over. Coulter is too tied to this town. Sent last week. DK says everything is ready. Just need to finish the details. Sent 3 days. AG.DK. Someone with the initials DK was helping his wife plan something. And whatever they were planning involved starting over without him. Coulter photographed every message and put the phone back where he'd found it. That evening, he waited until Jolene was in the shower and checked their joint bank account online. The balance was lower than it should be. Much lowered. He printed out 3 months of statements and highlighted every transaction he didn't recognize. Storage unit rental fees. Cash withdrawals of $200 twice a week. A $78,000 wire transfer to an account he'd never seen before. The transfer had happened 2 weeks ago, right around the time Jolene started mentioning Talia's tired days. Coulter sat at his kitchen table with the bank statements spread in front of him and forced himself to think like the Marine he used to be. Not like a husband, not like a father, like someone gathering intelligence on an enemy. His wife was planning to leave him. She had moved $78,000 of their money to an account he couldn't access. She was communicating with someone named DK about starting over. And somehow, their 2-year-old daughter had ended up with enough sedatives in her blood to require emergency medical care. The pieces didn't form a complete picture yet, but they formed enough of one to make Coulter's hand shake as he carefully put the bank statements back where they belonged. Friday evening, Coulter drove to Mia's apartment in downtown Spokane. His half-sister lived in a converted warehouse that she'd turned into something that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Clean lines, exposed brick, everything organized and purposeful. Mia was 5 years younger than Coulter, but she'd inherited their father's sharp intelligence and their mother's refusal to back down from a fight. She worked as a legal assistant for one of the bigger law firms in town, and Coulter trusted her judgment more than anyone's. "You look like hell," she said when she opened the door. "I need to talk to you." Mia poured him a beer and sat across from him at her kitchen island. Coulter told her everything. The hospital, the clonidine, the second phone, the bank statements. When he finished, Mia was quiet for a long time. "The sedative thing," she said finally. "It has a name." "What kind of name?" "Munchausen syndrome by proxy. It's when a caregiver makes a child sick on purpose. Usually for attention, sometimes for other reasons." Coulter felt something twist in his stomach. "You think Jolene is making Talia sick? I think you need to document everything. Every single thing. Because if this goes where I think it's going, you're going to need evidence that will hold up in court." "What do you mean?" "I mean, if Jolene is planning to disappear with Talia, and if she's been drugging her to keep her compliant, then you're looking at kidnapping, child endangerment, maybe worse." Mia stood up and started pacing. It was what she did when her mind was working. "But here's the thing, Coulter. Half a truth can be twisted in court. If you go to the police now with what you have, a good lawyer could make it look like coincidence. Like you're a paranoid husband trying to destroy his wife. So what do? You build an airtight case. You document everything. You find out who DK is and what the plan actually involves. And you don't make a move until you have enough evidence to bury them both." Coulter drank his beer and stared out Mia's window at the city lights below. "There's something else," he said. "The doctor at the hospital. He recognized her. When he saw Jolene, he looked like he'd seen a ghost." "Did he say anything?" "Just told me to keep Talia close." Mia stopped pacing. "That's not a casual comment from an ER doctor." "No, it's not. I think you need to have another conversation with Dr. Crane. Off the record. Coulter nodded. He was already planning to do exactly that. And Coulter, yeah, until we figure this out, don't leave Talia alone with Jolene. Not for 5 minutes. Mia called Coulter at work the following Monday with news that made his blood run cold. I found something, she said without preamble. Can you meet me for lunch? They met at a small diner on Division Street where the coffee was strong and the booths offered privacy. Mia had a manila folder with her that she slid across the table. I ran Jolene's maiden name through public records databases. Mackenzie. Jolene Mackenzie. Coulter opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of newspaper articles, police reports, and court documents from Boise, Idaho. 3 years ago, Mia continued, a 2-year-old named Emma Caldwell died in Boise. Sudden respiratory failure. No clear cause of death. Coulter read the first article. The headline made his stomach drop. Toddler's death remains mystery. Jolene was the babysitter, Mia said. She was watching Emma while the parents worked. Found the child unresponsive, called 911, all the right things. But look at this. She pointed to a paragraph halfway down the article. The autopsy found traces of clonidine in the child's system. Same drug they found in Talia. Coulter kept reading. There had been an investigation. Child Protective Services had interviewed Jolene multiple times. There were suspicions, but no concrete evidence. The case was eventually closed due to insufficient proof of wrongdoing. 6 months after the case was closed, Mia said, Jolene moved to Spokane and changed her last name to Richards. That's when she met you. Coulter felt like someone had punched him in the chest. She changed her name to hide from this. It looks that way. And then she married me and had Talia. And now Talia ends up with the same drug in her system that killed Emma Caldwell. Coulter closed the folder and leaned back in the booth. Everything made sense now. The way Jolene had been so calm when he found Talia on the floor. The way she'd acted like it was no big deal she'd done this before. There's more, Mia said. I found the original CPS report. Want to guess who the investigating social worker was? Tell me. Someone who noted that Jolene seemed unusually calm during questioning and showed inappropriate effect when discussing the child's death. Coulter thought about Jolene sitting on the couch while Talia lay dying on the floor. Unusually calm. Inappropriate effect. We need to talk to the parents, he said. I already did. The Caldwells moved to Portland after Emma died. Mrs. Caldwell was willing to talk. And she said Jolene volunteered to babysit when Emma started having episodes. Times when she would be unusually tired, wouldn't eat, just wanted to sleep. Sound familiar? It sounded exactly like the tired days Jolene had been describing with Talia. Mrs. Caldwell said the episodes only happened when Jolene was watching Emma. When they were home, Emma was perfectly normal. Coulter's hands were shaking now. How many episodes? 7 over the course of 3 months. And then Emma died. 7 episodes. Like someone was practicing. Like someone was figuring out the right dose. We need to take this to the police. Not yet, Mia said. This happened in Idaho. Different jurisdiction. And the case was closed. We need more than pattern evidence. What do we need? We need to catch her in the act. That evening, Coulter drove to Deaconess Medical Center and waited in the parking lot until Dr. Crane's shift ended. He followed the doctor to a coffee shop on the South Hill and approached him as he was ordering. Dr. Crane? I'm Coulter Ames, Talia's father. Dr. Crane turned around and immediately looked uncomfortable. Mr. Ames, how is your daughter? She's fine. Can we talk? Dr. Crane glanced around the coffee shop like he was looking for an escape route. I'm not sure that's appropriate. It's about Jolene. The doctor's entire demeanor changed. He canceled his coffee order and led Coulter to a table in the back corner of the shop. You recognized her, Coulter said without preamble. When you saw my wife, you knew her. Dr. Crane was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I used to work in Boise before I came to Spokane. Emma Caldwell. Dr. Crane's face went pale. How do you know about Emma? Because my sister ran background checks. Because my daughter ended up with the same drug in her system that killed Emma. Because my wife was Emma's babysitter. Jesus. Dr. Crane put his head in his hands. Tell me what happened. Emma was brought to our ER by your wife. Unresponsive, shallow breathing, exactly like your daughter. We ran blood work and found clonidine, and you suspected Jolene. I more than suspected her. I knew. But knowing and proving are two different things. Dr. Crane looked up at Coulter with haunted eyes. Emma wasn't the first child your wife brought to our ER. Over the previous 3 months, she'd brought Emma in 4 times for various complaints. Always vague symptoms. Always when the parents weren't around. What kind of symptoms? Lethargy, loss of appetite, difficulty waking up. Classic signs of sedative poisoning, but at levels that weren't immediately life-threatening. Until the last time. That night, Emma didn't wake up. Dr. Crane's hands were shaking now, just like they had been at the hospital. I reported my suspicions to CPS. I testified at the investigation. I did everything I could do, but there was no direct evidence. No one saw your wife give Emma anything. No pills were found in her possession. The case was dismissed. And then Jolene disappeared. 6 months later, I found out she'd moved to Washington. I thought about reporting it to someone, but who? She hadn't been charged with anything. There was no legal mechanism to stop her from moving. Dr. Crane leaned forward across the table. Mr. Ames, when I saw your wife walk into my ER with another child showing the same symptoms, I nearly had a panic attack. I wanted to call the police right then, but I had no proof. No evidence. Just a terrible feeling that history was repeating itself. If I needed you to testify, Coulter said, would you do it? Yes. God, yes. If there's a chance to stop her from hurting another child, I'll testify to whatever you need. Coulter left the coffee shop with Dr. Crane's contact information and a promise that the doctor would document everything he remembered about the Emma Caldwell case. He also left with the sick certainty that his wife was a killer. The next step was finding out who DK was. Coulter called in a favor from Jake Morrison, a buddy from his Marine unit who now worked private security in Seattle. Jake specialized in surveillance and had access to equipment that wasn't exactly available at Best Buy. I need to track someone's movements, Coulter told him over the phone. Legal or illegal? Legal. It's my wife. Divorce case. Something like that. Jake arrived in Spokane that weekend with a bag full of GPS trackers and a laptop that could monitor them in real time. He helped Coulter install a magnetic tracker on Jolene's Honda and another on her keychain. Battery life is about 2 weeks, Jake explained. Range is unlimited as long as she's got cell coverage. You can monitor everything from this app on your phone. Monday morning, Jolene told Coulter she was going grocery shopping. According to the GPS tracker, she drove to a Starbucks on the north side and sat there for 2 hours. When she came home, she didn't have any groceries. Tuesday, she said she was getting her hair done. The tracker showed she went to a hotel parking lot and stayed for 3 hours. Wednesday was the breakthrough. The tracker showed Jolene driving to a high-end neighborhood near Manitou Park. She parked in front of a large colonial-style house and stayed for 4 hours. That evening, Coulter drove past the house and wrote down the address. A quick search of public records told him the house belonged to Declan Carr, age 39, occupation listed as financial planner DK. Declan Carr. Now Coulter had a name and an address. But he needed more. Friday afternoon, he called in sick to work and followed Jolene himself. She drove to a branch of Columbia Bank downtown and went inside for 30 minutes. When she came out, she was carrying a manila envelope. From the bank, she drove to a storage facility on East Sprague. Unit 247. Coulter parked across the street and watched his wife unload boxes from her car into the storage unit. When she was done, she stood outside the unit for several minutes, talking on her phone. That night, after Jolene was asleep, Coulter checked their bank account again. Another $5,000 had been transferred to the same unknown account. He was running out of money and running out of time. Saturday morning, Jake called with an update. Your storage unit situation just got interesting, he said. What do you mean? I did a little reconnaissance last night. Want to know what's in unit 247. Tell me. Suitcases. About 6 of them. A bag that looks like it contains medical supplies. Some kind of travel documents. And a car seat. Coulter felt his blood turn to ice. A car seat. Toddler-sized. Still in the box. She's planning to run. That would be my assessment. With Talia. The car seat suggests that, yeah. Coulter hung up the phone and stared at his sleeping daughter. Jolene was planning to drug Talia, put her in a car seat, and disappear. Probably to Mexico, based on the travel documents Jake had seen. And if Talia reacted to the sedatives the way Emma Caldwell had, she might not survive the trip. Coulter waited until Sunday evening to make his move. Talia was in bed, and Jolene was folding laundry in the living room with her usual mechanical precision. "We need to talk," he said. Jolene looked up from the towel she was folding. "About what?" "About Declan." Her hands froze. For just a moment, the mask slipped, and Coulter saw something like panic in her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by that calm expression he'd learned to hate. "I don't know what you mean." "Declan Carr, financial planner, lives in a house near Manitou Park where you've been spending your afternoons." Jolene set down the towel she was holding. "You're following me? I'm protecting my daughter." "From what?" "From you." The words hung in the air between them like a weapon. "Coulter, you're being paranoid." "Am I?" "Because I found the storage unit, Jolene. I found the car seat. I found the $78,000 you transferred to Declan's account." Jolene stood up slowly. Her face had gone completely blank. "You don't understand," she said. "Then explain it to me." "I feel trapped. You're always gone, working all the time. I never get a break. I never get to be anything except Talia's mother and your wife. So you decided to drug our daughter and run away to Mexico. I never. You gave her clonidine, Jolene. Enough to put her in the hospital. The same drug that killed Emma Caldwell in Boise. Now the mask didn't just slip. It shattered completely. Jolene's face contorted with something Coulter had never seen before. Something cold and predatory. "You don't know anything about Emma. I know you killed her." "I didn't kill anyone. Emma was sick. She had episodes. I was trying to help her. By giving her sedatives, by giving her rest. Children need rest. They need quiet. They need to stop crying and stop demanding and stop taking everything from you." Coulter stared at his wife and realized he was looking at a complete stranger. "You're not broken," he said quietly. "You're evil. You just pretend better than most." Jolene's laugh was like breaking glass. "Evil? I'm practical. Talia will be better off with me. Away from this place. Away from you. You're not taking her anywhere. Watch me." Jolene headed for the stairs, probably to pack. Or to grab Talia. Coulter didn't care which. "If you touch our daughter," he said, "if you go anywhere near her, I will destroy you." Jolene stopped at the bottom of the stairs and turned back to face him. "You could try." She went upstairs. Coulter heard her moving around in their bedroom, then in Talia's room. He stayed downstairs, hands clenched into fists, forcing himself not to follow her. 10 minutes later, Jolene came back down with a suitcase and her purse. "I'm going to Declan's. We'll talk about custody arrangements through lawyers." She headed for the front door. "Jolene." She turned back. "Leave Talia here. She's my daughter too. Leave her here, or I call the police right now." For a moment, it looked like Jolene might argue. Then she shrugged. "Fine, but this isn't over." She walked out the front door and drove away. Coulter waited until her taillights disappeared, then went upstairs to check on Talia. She was sleeping peacefully in her crib, one small hand curled around her favorite stuffed animal. He sat in the rocking chair next to her crib and called Mia. "It's done," he said when she answered. "She's gone, and Talia, safe. For now. What's the next move?" "We finished building the case. Because she's coming back." Monday morning, Mia arranged a meeting with Amanda Foster, a deputy district attorney she knew from her law firm's criminal defense work. Foster had a reputation for being thorough, aggressive, and completely unsympathetic to people who hurt children. They met in Foster's office at the Spokane County Courthouse. Coulter brought everything. The bank statements, the photos of the pills and the second phone, the GPS tracking data, the storage unit information, the medical records from both Talia and Emma Caldwell. Foster listened without interrupting while Mia presented the evidence. When they were finished, she leaned back in her chair and studied the documents spread across her desk. "This is good," she said finally. "Really good. You've got motive, means, and opportunity. You've got pattern evidence. You've got medical testimony." But Coulter could hear the hesitation in her voice. but I need more to make it airtight. Right now, this is circumstantial. Strong circumstantial, but still circumstantial. What do we need? I need direct evidence of intent to harm, or I need to catch them in the act of planning something. The storage unit is suggestive, but not conclusive. She could claim she was planning to leave you and take Talia, which isn't illegal by itself. Foster picked up the photos of the text messages from Jolene's second phone. This Declan Carr. Tell me about him. Financial planner. Lives in a big house. Has access to my wife and my money. I'll run a background check on him. See if he has any priors. What about the medical evidence? Dr. Crane's testimony about the Boise case is powerful. But again, that case was closed without charges. A defense attorney could argue it's prejudicial. Foster stood up and walked to her window overlooking the courthouse parking lot. Here's what I recommend. File for emergency custody of your daughter immediately. The medical evidence from her hospitalization should be enough for a judge to grant that. And then we wait. If your wife is planning what we think she's planning, she'll make a move. And when she does, we'll be ready. Mia handled the custody paperwork. By Wednesday afternoon, Coulter had temporary sole custody of Talia, with a restraining order preventing Jolene from taking her out of Spokane County. Foster's background check on Declan Carr came back with interesting results. No criminal history, but financial irregularities. 3 businesses he'd managed had filed for bankruptcy under suspicious circumstances. The IRS had flagged his accounts for possible money laundering. Your wife picked a winner, Foster told Coulter over the phone. This guy is dirty. Question is, how dirty? Thursday evening, Jake called with an update from his surveillance of the storage unit. Your wife showed up this morning with Declan. They removed everything from a unit and loaded it into a white panel van. License plate. Already ran it. The van is registered to one of Declan's shell companies. Where did they go? I followed them to a warehouse district near the airport. They unloaded everything into a building that's supposed to be vacant. According to city records, it's been empty for 6 months. But there's definitely activity there. Coulter felt the pieces clicking into place. Jolene and Declan weren't just planning to disappear. They were planning something bigger. Friday morning, Foster called with news that made everything fall into place. I heard back from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, she said. Declan Carr is under investigation for operating a money laundering scheme. Small businesses, cash-heavy operations, moving dirty money through legitimate accounts. And Jolene, if she's involved with him, she's involved with federal crimes. Which means when we move big. When do we move? Soon. Very soon. Jolene returned to Declan's house Friday night like a wounded animal seeking shelter. She'd been staying at a motel since leaving Coulter, afraid to face Declan's questions about why her plan had fallen apart. But she was running out of money and running out of options. Declan answered the door wearing an expensive suit and an expression that made her stomach drop. We need to talk, she said. Yes, we do. He led her into his study, a room that screamed success with its leather furniture and wall-mounted diplomas. Declan poured himself a scotch, but didn't offer her one. Explain to me, he said without preamble, how your husband knows about the storage unit. I don't know. He must have followed me. And the bank transfers? He checks the accounts. I should have been more careful. Declan sat behind his desk like a judge preparing to pass sentence. Jolene, you assure me this would be simple. You take the child, we disappear to Mexico, and your husband eventually moves on with his life. It still can be. We just need to. He knows about me. He knows about the money. He knows about the storage unit. Declan's voice was perfectly calm, which made it more terrifying than if he'd been shouting. How exactly do you propose we make this simple? Jolene felt panic rising in her chest. We stick to the plan. I get Talia. We leave tonight. With what money? Your husband has frozen the accounts. What? I checked this morning. All joint accounts have been flagged for suspicious activity. My contact at the bank says there's a federal investigation. Jolene collapsed into one of the leather chairs. Everything was falling apart. There's another problem, Declan continued. Your husband filed for emergency custody. There's a restraining order preventing you from taking the child out of the county. Since when? Since Wednesday. Jolene stared at him. You've known about this for 2 days and didn't tell me. I've been evaluating our options. What options? Declan finished his scotch and set the glass down with deliberate precision. If we run now, it's proof of guilt. Every law enforcement agency in the country will be looking for us within 24 hours. So what do you suggest? We handle this quietly. If your husband talks, we make sure no one believes him. Something in Declan's tone made Jolene's blood run cold. What does that mean? It means your husband is a problem that needs to be solved. Declan, no. I never wanted. You wanted out of your marriage. You wanted a new life. You wanted $78,000 of your husband's money to pay for it. Declan leaned forward. Actions have consequences, Jolene. Jolene stood up quickly. I'm not going to be part of hurting Coulter. You already are part of it. The moment you transferred that money, you became my partner in a federal crime. I'll give the money back. Will you also give back Emma Caldwell's life? The words hit Jolene like a physical blow. How do you know about Emma? I know about everything, Jolene. It's what I do. Declan picked up his phone and scrolled through his contacts. I have someone who can make your husband's credibility disappear. Permanently. Stop. Just stop. Jolene was backing toward the door. I'm not doing this. Yes, you are. Because if you don't, I'll make sure the FBI knows exactly who killed Emma Caldwell. Jolene froze. You can't prove that. I don't have to prove it. I just have to point them in the right direction. Declan found the contact he was looking for and hit dial. It's me, he said when someone answered. I need that favor we discussed. What Declan didn't know was that his phone had been compromised for 3 days. What he also didn't know was that Coulter, Jake, and 2 FBI agents were sitting in a surveillance van 3 blocks away, recording every word of his conversation. Target just made the call. Agent Sarah Chun said into her radio. All units move in. Coulter watched through the van's monitors as FBI agents surrounded Declan's house. He'd been working with the federal task force since Foster connected him with their financial crimes unit. The money laundering investigation had been going on for months, but Jolene's involvement had given them the break they needed to move. We've got visual on both targets, came the voice over the radio. Moving to arrest. Through the camera feed, Coulter watched federal agents burst through Declan's front door. He saw Jolene try to run out the back and get tackled by 2 agents in the garden. He saw Declan attempt to destroy his computer and get stopped by Agent Chen's partner. IT was over in less than 5 minutes. Coulter. Agent Chun turned to face him. We're going to need you to testify about the medical evidence and the bank transfers. Whatever you need. The child endangerment charges will be handled by the state. But the financial crimes, the money laundering, the conspiracy charges, those are federal. 2 hours later, Coulter sat in a courthouse conference room, watching Jolene and Declan being arraigned via video feed. Jolene looked like she was in shock. Declan looked like he was already planning his defense. Foster sat beside him, making notes on a legal pad. How long before trial? Coulter asked. Months, probably. But with the evidence we have, neither of them is getting bail. And Talia? Talia stays with you. Permanently. Dr. Crane testified the next day. He walked the judge through both cases, Emma Caldwell and Talia Ames. He explained the medical evidence, the pattern of sedation, the escalating doses. In my professional opinion, Dr. Crane said, Jolene Ames represents a clear and present danger to any child in her care. The judge agreed. Jolene's parental rights were immediately suspended pending the outcome of the criminal trial. 6 months later, as Jolene's trial was beginning, Declan's lawyer approached Foster with a deal. My client wants to cooperate, the lawyer said. Full disclosure of the money laundering operation in exchange for a reduced sentence. What's he offering? Names, dates, financial records, and something else your client might find interesting. Foster met with Coulter that afternoon. Declan has audio recordings, she said. Apparently he recorded conversations with Jolene as insurance. What kind of conversations? The kind where she admits to killing Emma Caldwell. Coulter felt the breath leave his lungs. He's been blackmailing her. That's how it looks. The recordings are from before she met you. Declan knew about Emma and used it to control her. And now he's willing to turn those over, if it means avoiding a life sentence for conspiracy to commit murder. The recordings were damning. In them, Jolene described exactly how she had gradually increased Emma's doses of clonidine until the child stopped breathing. She talked about how easy it had been to fool the doctors, the investigators, the child's parents. I was so careful, her voice said through the courtroom speakers. I knew exactly how much to give her. But that last time, I wanted to see what would happen if I doubled it. Coulter listened to his wife describe murdering a 2-year-old like she was discussing a recipe. When the recordings finished, Jolene's lawyer requested a recess. When they returned, Jolene had agreed to plead guilty to all charges in exchange for life in prison instead of the death penalty. The judge accepted Jolene's plea deal on a Tuesday morning in October, 1 year after Talia had been rushed to the emergency room. Jolene Richards Ames, the judge said, "You are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of Emma Caldwell, and an additional 25 years for child endangerment and conspiracy charges related to your daughter Talia Ames." Jolene stood to hear her sentence with the same blank expression she'd worn throughout the trial. When the judge finished speaking, she turned to look at Coulter one last time. He stared back at her without a trace of emotion. 2 weeks later, Declan was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison for money laundering, conspiracy, and accessory charges. The civil proceedings were simpler. Coulter's lawyer seized every asset Declan and Jolene had touched. The house, the cars, the hidden accounts, everything was liquidated to pay restitution. By Christmas, Coulter had recovered not just the $78,000 Jolene had transferred, but an additional $200,000 from Declan's criminal enterprises. 1 year later, Coulter sat on his front porch with Talia in his lap. She was 3 now, talking in full sentences and showing no lingering effect from her mother's poisoning. The house looked different. Coulter had painted it, replaced the furniture, changed everything that reminded him of Jolene. It was their house, now his and Talia's. Mia had started her own legal consulting firm and stopped by regularly to check on them. Dr. Crane had become something like a family friend, monitoring Talia's health and providing medical advice. Jake visited from Seattle once a month, bringing military stories and helping Coulter teach Talia basic self-defense, moves that looked like games to a 3-year-old. The auto shop was thriving. Coulter had hired 2 more mechanics and was considering opening a second location. Life was good. "Daddy," Talia said, looking up at him with eyes that were exactly like his own. "Is Mommy gone?" It was a question she asked sometimes. Not often, but often enough that Coulter had prepared for it. "Mommy made her choice," he said quietly. "I made mine." "What choice did you make?" "I chose you. I chose to keep you safe. I chose to be your daddy, forever." Talia nodded like this made perfect sense to her. "Good choice," she said, and went back to playing with her toy truck. Coulter looked out at his neighborhood, the same streets, the same houses, the same quiet suburban life he'd always known. But everything was different now. Everything was clean. The truth had been a weapon, just like Mia had said. Methodically gathered, carefully presented, it had destroyed the lies that nearly destroyed his daughter. Some people said he should forgive. Should try to understand why Jolene had done what she'd done. Should feel sorry for a woman who was obviously mentally ill. Coulter felt none of those things. Evil was evil, no matter how well it hid behind a pretty face and a calm demeanor. Jolene had chosen to hurt children. She had chosen to poison his daughter. She had chosen to murder Emma Caldwell. And Coulter had chosen to stop her. In the distance, he could hear the sound of children playing, the hum of traffic, the ordinary sounds of a life worth protecting. Talia fell asleep against his chest as the sun set over Spokane Valley. Coulter held her close and watched the stars come out, one by one, until the sky was full of light.